My beloved child. Stop scrolling, not because I demand your attention, but because something has been quietly searching for your heart. Before this moment arrived, before your eyes settled on these words, a path was already unfolding beneath your feet. You may believe this is only another story, another voice among many, but listen closely. Some stories are not meant to predict your future. They are meant to awaken your courage, your hope, and your faith. This is one of them. Last night, while the world slept and countless prayers floated silently into the heavens, another conversation was taking place. It was ordinary at first. Laughter echoed through a dimly lit room. Glasses touched. Old memories resurfaced. Walls that had hidden emotions for years began to crack beneath the weight of honesty that only exhaustion and vulnerability could uncover. Among those gathered was someone connected to the person your heart has never completely forgotten. Their brother. His mind was clouded by drink, yet strangely, the deeper his guard fell, the closer he drifted toward truths he had spent years avoiding. Sometimes people imagine that clarity belongs only to sober minds. Yet there are moments when hidden emotions escape because every carefully built defense finally collapses. This is a fictional story, my child, but within stories, hearts often recognize pieces of themselves. He reached for a phone almost absent-mindedly. Photos flashed across the glowing screen. Faces of friends. Family. Vacations. Smiles that carried invisible wounds. Then, everything stopped. His thumb froze above one photograph. Yours. Not because the picture itself was extraordinary. Not because of expensive clothes or perfect lighting. Not because of beauty measured by the world's impossible standards. Something else reached him. Something he could not explain. His breathing slowed. His expression shifted. The laughter around him faded into the background as though the room itself had stepped away. "What is it?" someone asked. He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Not immediately. There was something about your face. Not your features. Not your smile. Not your eyes alone. Something beneath them. Something impossible to describe with ordinary language. And in that single moment, the entire direction of the conversation began to change. But before you imagine romance, before you assume this story is simply about another person's feelings, understand something far more important. Sometimes the greatest transformations begin long before anyone speaks. They begin when someone finally sees what has always been hidden. My child. Have you ever wondered why certain people stare at you for just a little longer than expected? Why complete strangers sometimes smile without knowing why? Why others become uncomfortable around your peace? Why some cannot explain why they trust you, while others cannot explain why they resist you? Not every reaction is about appearance. People often respond to what your spirit quietly carries. The world teaches people to judge faces. Heaven teaches hearts to recognize light. Whether you realize it or not, every difficult season you survived left something behind. Pain changed you. Loss reshaped you. Loneliness deepened you. Disappointment refined you. Every tear became part of a quiet testimony that cannot always be seen, but can sometimes be felt. And though this story is fictional, let it remind you of something true. You have changed in ways mirrors cannot measure. The brother kept staring. His own brother, the one connected to your heart, noticed. Why are you looking at that picture? Still no answer. Another long silence. Then came an unexpected question. Do you know? He stopped. He looked again. Has their face always looked like this? The room grew quieter. No one understood what he meant. He couldn't explain it. He only knew something felt different. Almost familiar. Almost peaceful. Almost heartbreaking. It reminded him of someone. Not someone he knew. Someone he had once hoped existed. The kind of person who walks through storms and somehow still chooses kindness. The kind of person whose eyes reveal battles they never brag about winning. The kind of face carrying invisible prayers. He could not find the words. Neither could anyone else. My beloved child. The world often mistakes softness for weakness. But heaven has watched every silent decision you made when no applause followed. Every time you forgave without receiving an apology. Every time you stayed honest when dishonesty seemed easier. Every time you kept loving after disappointment whispered that love was foolish. Those moments leave fingerprints upon the soul. Eventually, someone notices. Not because you tried to be noticed. Because authenticity cannot remain hidden forever. Across the room another voice interrupted. Oh, that's just a picture. Just a picture. How often has the world reduced your story to something simple? Just another face. Just another person. Just another ordinary life. Yet heaven has never called you ordinary. Your journey has always been layered with moments no audience witnessed. The nights you questioned your purpose. The mornings you forced yourself to keep moving. The prayers that felt unanswered. The dreams placed carefully inside locked corners of your heart because disappointment had become too familiar. Still. You continued. That matters more than you know. The brother leaned closer toward the screen. He enlarged the photo. Not because he was searching for flaws. Because he felt something impossible to ignore. It's strange, he whispered. The face isn't what keeps pulling me back. Someone laughed. What then? He answered with complete honesty. It feels like they survived something. Silence. No one laughed after that. Because somehow, everyone felt the weight of those words. Survived something. How many people walk through crowded streets carrying invisible victories? How many smiles hide battles no photograph could ever reveal? How many people have been quietly rebuilding themselves while the world assumed they were doing just fine? Perhaps more than anyone realizes. Perhaps. Someone listening right now understands exactly what that feels like. My child. Stories become powerful because they hold mirrors before our hearts. Not mirrors that reflect appearances. Mirrors that reveal resilience. There is a difference. Your scars may never become visible to everyone. They don't need to. The strongest foundations are buried beneath the surface. No one applauds the roots beneath the tree. Yet without them, nothing beautiful could remain standing. The conversation drifted elsewhere for only a few moments. But he kept returning to the photo. Again. 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 Every time he tried to look away, his attention returned. As though one unanswered question refused to leave him. Finally he asked quietly. What happened to them? His brother hesitated. What do you mean? I don't know. He searched for words. They look peaceful now. But not because life was easy. They look like someone who cried until they learned how to smile differently. No one expected that sentence. Least of all himself. Sometimes truth surprises the person speaking it. The room no longer felt like a casual gathering. Something deeper had entered. Not magic. Not fortune-telling. Simply humanity becoming honest. My beloved child. Many people never realize how visible healing becomes. Pain often screams. Healing whispers. But whispers travel farther than screams ever could. The strongest people rarely announce how strong they became. Strength simply appears in the way they carry ordinary days. In the patience they extend. In the gentleness they protect. In the compassion they refuse to abandon. That kind of beauty cannot be manufactured. It grows slowly. Quietly. Like dawn. Have you noticed how sunrise never argues with darkness? It simply arrives. That is how healing works. It does not fight for attention. It transforms everything by its presence. The brother lowered the phone. He rubbed his eyes. Perhaps it was exhaustion. Perhaps it was emotion. Perhaps both. Then he spoke words no one expected. If they ever doubt themselves. He stopped again. I hope someone tells them they're finally becoming who they were always meant to be. Those words hung in the air. No one answered. Because everyone was suddenly thinking about someone they had underestimated. Sometimes. That person is ourselves. My child. How many years did you spend believing your value depended on someone else's opinion? How long did you wait for approval before allowing yourself to feel worthy? How often did rejection convince you that you were invisible? Listen carefully. Another person's inability to recognize your worth has never reduced your worth. Clouds hide stars. They do not erase them. Rain covers mountains. It does not remove them. Silence delays songs. It does not destroy music. In the same way, waiting seasons never cancel purpose. They prepare it. The room had grown strangely thoughtful. Conversations about work disappeared. Jokes faded. People who arrived expecting entertainment found themselves reflecting on lives they had carefully avoided examining. One person finally asked, "So, what do you think changed?" The brother answered almost immediately. Not the picture. He looked one final time. The person. No explanation followed. None was needed. Sometimes change cannot be measured. Only recognized. Perhaps this fictional moment reminds you of something real. Growth is often invisible while it is happening. Trees do not hear themselves growing. Neither do hearts. Yet one day, someone notices. And suddenly the journey that felt unnoticed reveals quiet evidence that every difficult step mattered. But the story had not reached its most unexpected turn. Not even close. Because while everyone believed the conversation had reached its end, one person who had remained silent from the beginning finally leaned forward. He had listened to every word without interruption. Without judgment. Without offering opinions. His eyes rested on your photograph for only a brief moment before he slowly inhaled. Then, with a voice so calm that it unsettled everyone in the room, he said, "No, you're all looking at the wrong thing." The room fell completely silent. Every face turned toward him. No one laughed. No one interrupted. Even the music in the background seemed suddenly distant. He pointed gently toward the photograph. It isn't their smile. It isn't their eyes. It isn't even the piece you're talking about. He paused, as though deciding whether he should say what was on his heart. Then he whispered something so unexpected that every person in the room instinctively looked back at your face once more. And the very next words he spoke would change not only the conversation, but the way they would think about you forever. "My beloved child." The silence that settled over the room was unlike anything they had experienced that evening. The laughter had vanished. The music had become little more than a distant echo. Even the clinking of glasses seemed to wait for the next words. The man who had spoken did not rush. He looked at your photograph one more time, then slowly lowered the phone onto the table. "You think something about their face changed," he said quietly. "But that isn't what you're seeing." Every eye remained fixed on him. "What you're seeing is what happens when someone survives the kind of battles that never make the news." No one answered. His words landed with a weight no one expected. "There are people," he continued, "who carry pain so gracefully that the world mistakes it for peace." The room grew still. The brother who had first noticed your photograph felt a strange tightness in his chest. He could not explain why. It was as though the picture had become a mirror, reflecting questions he had buried inside himself for years. My beloved child, let this fictional story remind you of something true. Some of the strongest people you will ever meet are the ones who quietly chose kindness after life gave them every excuse to become bitter. Strength is not always loud. Faith is not always visible. Healing rarely announces itself. Sometimes heaven's greatest work happens in silence. The man leaned back in his chair. I don't know this person, he admitted. But I know that expression. What expression? Someone asked. The expression of someone who stopped asking, why did this happen to me, and started asking, what can I become because of it? Those words settled over everyone like gentle rain. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then the brother whispered, almost to himself, maybe that's why I couldn't stop looking. He wasn't staring because of appearance. He was responding to something deeper. Something that cannot be edited into a photograph or purchased with success. It was the quiet evidence of endurance. My beloved child, many people spend years trying to change how they look while forgetting that the heart slowly changes the face. Compassion softens the eyes. Forgiveness relaxes the soul. Hope brings a light that no camera can create. These things cannot be manufactured. They grow one decision at a time. One prayer at a time. One act of courage at a time. The conversation continued, but now it was no longer about you alone. Each person began remembering someone they had misjudged. Someone whose smile had hidden grief. Someone whose silence had hidden wisdom. Someone whose ordinary life had concealed extraordinary resilience. Then something unexpected happened. The brother opened an old conversation on the phone. Your picture appeared again, surrounded by messages from months before. He scrolled slowly. There were ordinary exchanges. Small conversations. Nothing dramatic. Yet he noticed something he had completely ignored before. The way your words encouraged others. The way you thanked people. The way you apologized when necessary. The way you spoke with gentleness instead of pride. He shook his head. I never noticed this. His own brother looked surprised. What? The consistency. What do you mean? They're the same person in every conversation. No performance. No pretending. No different personality depending on who was watching. Just quiet authenticity. My beloved child, integrity is what remains when no audience is present. The world often celebrates popularity. Heaven delights in faithfulness. You do not need thousands of people to notice your character. Character has never depended on applause. It depends on the choices you make when only God sees. Outside, the night grew darker. Rain began tapping softly against the windows. The sound filled the silence. One of the people at the table finally smiled. You know, she said, it's strange. What is? I've spent years judging people by first impressions. She looked once more at your picture. But maybe first impressions aren't supposed to tell us everything. The others nodded. They had all been reminded that every human being carries chapters invisible to strangers. The brother slowly locked the phone. For the first time that evening, he no longer looked confused. Instead, he looked thoughtful. I hope, he whispered, whoever they are, they know they're making more of an impact than they realize. My beloved child, there will be seasons when your efforts seem unnoticed. Do not lose heart. Seeds buried beneath the earth appear invisible. Yet they are quietly preparing for life. The gardener does not dig them up every morning to see if they are growing. He trusts the process. In the same way, continue planting kindness. Continue choosing honesty. Continue walking in hope. Not every harvest arrives immediately. But faithfulness is never wasted. As the gathering slowly came to an end, chairs scraped across the floor and people prepared to leave. The brother picked up his jacket. Before walking out, he glanced one final time toward the phone resting on the table. He smiled, not because every mystery had been answered, but because one question had changed him. Instead of asking, "Why can't I stop looking at this picture?" he found himself asking, "What kind of life creates that kind of peace?" And perhaps, my beloved child, that is the better question for all of us. Not how to appear different, but how to become different. Not how to impress others, but how to grow into someone whose kindness, resilience, and faith quietly speak for themselves. For even in this fictional tale, one timeless truth remains. A transformed heart leaves traces that the world may not understand, but it can often feel. And before dawn arrived, another conversation was about to begin, one that would reveal why your name had been spoken long before that photograph ever appeared. My beloved child. Morning arrived quietly. The rain had ended, but tiny drops still clung to the windows as though the night itself was reluctant to let go of what had happened. The gathering was over. Everyone had returned to their ordinary lives. Or so they believed. Yet something had shifted inside each of them. Not because they had solved a mystery. Not because they had uncovered a secret. But because a simple photograph had reminded them how little we truly know about another person's journey. The brother woke later than usual. His head still felt heavy from the night before. Fragments of conversation drifted back into his memory. Your photograph. The silence. The unexpected words spoken around the table. At first, he wondered if he had imagined it all. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat near the window. The room was quiet. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't distracted by noise. He found himself thinking about people he had overlooked. People he had judged too quickly. People he had misunderstood. Then, almost without thinking, he opened his phone again. Your picture appeared on the screen. This time he didn't stare. He simply smiled. Not because he suddenly knew your story. Because he realized he didn't need to. Respect does not always require complete understanding. Sometimes it begins with choosing compassion before assumptions. My beloved child, this fictional story carries a reminder that is worth holding on to. Every person you meet is carrying chapters you cannot read by looking at their face. Some are grieving quietly. Some are rebuilding after disappointment. Some are celebrating victories no one else noticed. Some are praying for strength while appearing perfectly calm. Choose kindness. It reaches farther than you may ever know. Later that afternoon, the brother crossed paths with the person whose heart had been connected to yours. The conversation began casually. They spoke about work, family, old memories. Then there was a pause. I kept thinking about something from last night, the brother admitted. What now? He hesitated before answering. I realized I spent years paying attention to the wrong things. What do you mean? I noticed people's appearance before I noticed their character. The word surprised even him. His brother looked thoughtful. Neither spoke for several moments. Sometimes growth begins with a sentence we never expected ourselves to say. My beloved child, transformation rarely arrives with loud announcements. It comes quietly. One realization. One apology. One act of forgiveness. One decision to become a little better than yesterday. That is how hearts change. Not overnight. But faithfully. As the day continued, unexpected conversations unfolded. People who had been distant reached out to one another. Someone apologized for an old misunderstanding. Someone chose patience instead of anger. Someone finally said thank you. None of these moments made headlines. Yet heaven delights in quiet acts of goodness. The greatest miracles are not always dramatic. Sometimes they are simply hearts choosing love where fear once lived. My beloved child, if there is one message hidden inside this fictional tale, let it be this. Do not measure your worth by how many people notice you. Measure your life by the love you give, the integrity you keep, and the hope you refuse to surrender. The world may celebrate appearance. But lasting beauty grows from compassion, humility, courage, and faith. Long after youth fades, those qualities continue to shine. Weeks passed. Life returned to its familiar rhythm. The photograph was no longer the center of anyone's conversation. Yet the lesson remained. Whenever the brother met someone new, he found himself wondering, what story have they survived? That single question made him slower to judge, quicker to listen, more willing to encourage. And little by little, his own heart became gentler. Isn't that often how change begins? Not through extraordinary events, but through ordinary moments that invite us to see people differently. My beloved child, perhaps someone has underestimated you. Perhaps someone has misunderstood your silence. Perhaps your efforts have gone unnoticed. Do not let that convince you that your life lacks purpose. The seed does not question its future while hidden beneath the soil. It continues growing. The sunrise does not ask permission before filling the sky with light. It simply arrives. In the same way, continue becoming the person you are called to be. Not for recognition. Not for applause. But because goodness is always worthwhile. One evening, as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, the brother looked at the fading light and remembered the conversation that had begun with a single photograph. He whispered softly, "People are more than the stories we imagine about them." That thought stayed with him. It became part of the way he lived. And somewhere, without ever knowing it, your fictional presence in this story had inspired someone to choose empathy over judgment. My beloved child, if these words have found your heart today, let them encourage you. Keep walking in hope. Keep choosing kindness when it would be easier to become cold. Keep believing that difficult seasons can shape wisdom instead of bitterness. The world needs people who carry light with quiet confidence. Not because they are perfect, but because they know every day is another opportunity to grow. May you remember that your value is never determined by another person's opinion. May your peace become stronger than your fear. May your compassion outlast every disappointment. And may your life remind others that the deepest beauty is not found in a face, but in a heart transformed by love, grace, and perseverance.